Let us go to our next guest. We were talking all about 314 and about, there's so many different angles to all the announcements. And one of the big announcements in this whole, this avalanche of news that hit us on Wednesday evening was that Michael Chandler is coming back and he's fighting Paddy Pimblett. And I love this matchup. And I love I love the timing of which this fight is happening and the stakes for both men. This feels like a sort of sink or swim fight for Paddy. Finally, we get to see him against a former champion in Bellator, a former title contender, a top contender, and we get to see an opportunity where Michael Chandler could get back on track after MSG. And so this is a phenomenal co-main event. It goes down UFC 314, April 12th in Miami, and Michael Chandler is kind enough to join us to talk about this and a whole host of things. There he is. Hello, Michael. How are you?
What's up, Ariel? I'm great, man. Just down here in Florida getting after it.
Yeah, and we're not too far away. We were all wondering, okay, what's going to happen here with this card? Because we were less than 2 months away last week, and then finally we get the avalanche of news. And so can I ask, the road to getting to this fight, because there were several fights that we thought maybe you can go after, that you can be, linked to. How did we end up with Paddy Pimblett?
That's a good question. After the fight, I, had a couple of weeks of going home, hanging out, and I got a call from the UFC, and they said, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Number one, great fight. It was fun to watch. But hey, what are you thinking next?" And Paddy Pimblett's name got thrown out there. Obviously, I loved the matchup, but I wasn't able to commit to any kind of dates or anything. I needed to get through some the recovery from the last fight, to say the least. And here we are. And now, obviously, it's happening in April. We got it ironed out. I was actually on a vacation, and then fast forward a couple of months later, I was on a vacation in Turks and Caicos and got a call from Hunter Campbell, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about April?" And I was like, "Well, recovery is going really well. I do not feel great about the last fight. I got a horrible taste in my mouth about it. Extremely let down, more let down than I've ever been. Let's go ahead. Let's do this thing in April. Let's put me in a position, because as you said, there is a ton of things going on: lightweight, featherweight, welterweight, all kinds of different rumors, all kinds of different matchups, all kinds of different things. And I want to fight a guy ASAP to get in the win column, do something spectacular in Miami, UFC 314, to keep my name in the mix."
And by the way, when was that call? Like, when are you on vacation? How long ago are you getting this call?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So It's a pretty tight turnaround.
Yeah. But, it's funny, man. I'm down here training, and as an athlete, or not even as an athlete, I've been around all of them, right? From the top of the top, most disciplined dudes in the world down to the guys who shouldn't even be considered professional athletes. No matter what, when you're going into a training camp, you never know how that first couple sessions are going to be, man. How bad of shape am I in? How in pain am I here? The little cricks here? Where did I neglect my recovery? All I can say is I was built for this, man, because I stepped right onto the mats here in South Florida with my team, and it's like I never left. As a matter of fact, I think I got better since my last fight, as far as just the composure, the movement, cardio. And I'm glad I made the decision, because I stand steadfast, and it's a common theme in my life. An imperfect plan implemented now is better than a perfect plan implemented sometime in the future, right? I could wait it out. I could wait till the perfect right time, maybe push it out to June. International Fight Week was obviously talked about, co-main event there. And that was kind of the rumblings and the talks. But then this opportunity came. It's like, man, what am I going to do? Sit at home and kind of put down a nice foundation like I always like to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been doing this for a long time, man, and I'm excited to go out there and compete against Paddy.
And so, to be clear, they offered you Paddy. You didn't ask for Paddy.
Yes, to be clear.
And did that excite you? Did you feel like, the reason I asked this question is because recently we've seen the talk from Dustin Poirier saying like, nah, I only have maybe 1 or 2 left. It's only top names, former contenders, champions, etc. He is not that. He is a top name, but he's not the other two. Did the opportunity to fight someone like Paddy excite you?
It did. There's a big fight. No matter which way you look at it, man, it's a big fight, and it's the life cycle of a fighter. I will, tip my hat to Dustin Poirier. He fought Benoit Saint Denis when not very many people knew him, right? Justin Gaethje fought Rafael Fiziev. I see it often on the social media webs, everybody's like, man, you're fighting everybody in the top 3, top 2, top 5. You need to go fight a young, hungry up and comer. Well, here you go, boys and girls. Here's my opportunity. Here's his opportunity. This is Paddy's opportunity to get inside the top 10. This is my opportunity to show you that there are different levels to this sport. I have still to this day, you can talk about my record, you can talk about losses, you can talk about how it's all went down, my run in the UFC thus far, but I have done nothing but fight first ballot Hall of Famers, former champions. Every single loss that I have has been to one of those guys. And when I don't fight one of those guys, knockout of Dan Hooker in 2.5 minutes, that brutal KO of Tony Ferguson, which was KO of the year. Something spectacular happens when my back is up against the wall, or I'm fighting a guy that's not named Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, or Charles Oliveira. So we'll see what happens on April 4th or April 12th, UFC 314.
What is your assessment of Paddy as a fighter? He's one of the more polarizing fighters in the sport because, the talk. Some say that he's not as good as the hype that he receives. I think as of late, he has looked a lot better. The last 2 fights in particular have been his best performances in the UFC. Perhaps the stench of the Jared Gordon fight is still there, but as someone who lives and breathes this and has done it and has made that walk a million times, your critical analysis of him, your assessment of him is what?
Yeah, and as a guy who trains with Jared Gordon, I talked to him this morning, and we're talking about a few things, and there's no doubt. Most people think Paddy lost that fight. Most people think that Jared won that fight and didn't just kind of eke it out and did enough. We can use this term, did he do enough to win? I think he beat Paddy Pimblett. But my assessment of him is, man, I think he's gotten a lot of undue criticism because when you're a big personality, you talk a certain way, you talk a little bit of trash. Obviously, he's had some run-ins with Ilia Topuria and some of these other guys where he's got these little animosities going on. The fans will either love that or they will hate that. They will either say, hey, you're propped up way too much, or they'll say, hey, I love Paddy Pimblett. You see it with a lot of guys. Bo Nickel's a great example right now. Guys, when they get into the UFC and they're fighting the toughest competition and they're fighting these big fights on these big stages in these big arenas, there's a certain learning curve that they need. I was very fortunate. I did all my learning curve back in Bellator, had to come into the UFC as a 32-year-old salty veteran and one of the top 5 guy right away. That was the path that I wanted. I told Hunter Campbell that when I sat in his office. I don't want to putz around the top 20, top 25. I don't need a tune-up fight. I want to get thrown into the shark-infested waters of the lightweight division. And that is what I have done since September of 2020. Paddy's good. He's growing. I think the pressure I'm going to put on him, he's obviously going to keep that evading, throwing a lot of kicks, kind of throwing some wild punches, trying to keep things interesting in there because he knows when one of these hands lands, it's going to be different than Jordan Levitt. It's going to be different than Bobby Green. It's going to be different than a lot of the guys that he has fought. But I'm up to the challenge. Prove me right. Prove me wrong. Let's see what happens.
Would you agree that he's never fought anyone like you?
Yeah, I mean that's an understatement.
Oh, I just want...
with all due respect, and I don't like to overemphasize or overboast, but my goodness, I have done nothing but train myself in violent hand-to-hand combat since I was 14 years old, and I have fought the best of the best, from former champions to guys who are absolute psychopaths like Justin Gaethje. Not even close.
Do you think he is cut from that same cloth? You, Gaethje, Poirier, those guys, like you guys seem to wake up when you're in a war. Do you think that he likes to get in wars? Do you think that he is able to be in a war? We've never really seen him in a war like that. You know what I'm talking about, like those types of fights, those legendary nights. Do you think he is that kind of guy?
Yeah, I mean, the absence of a war is not the presence of a coward or the presence of a guy who's just a point fighter. But yeah, I mean, as of late, or you look at some of his fights that he's had. I mean, some of these things are just stylistic matchups where it's like, well, there was no way it was going to turn into a war against this guy or that guy. But he's seen some adversity. His first fight in the UFC got dropped. And whoever that guy was, I forget what his name was and who he was, but he don't hit half as hard as I do. So we'll see. We'll test his chin. We'll test his gall. We'll test his championship mentality. We'll test his cardio. We will test his heart. Paddy Pimblett will be tested more than he has ever been tested in his entire life in April, just 7 short weeks away. And it's the biggest opportunity of his life. Does he rise to the occasion or does he sink? It remains to be seen. Either way, as I've said, I've been very respectful, cordial. Posted the video of me wearing the Paddy Pimblett hair. I mean, this sport is fun for me, man, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to run my own race. There it is right there. We're going to enjoy it. We're going to have fun. I don't need to hate Paddy Pimblett to want to separate him from consciousness. I don't need to have any kind of animosity to absolutely eviscerate this man. It's what I've been doing since I was 14 years old, and I prefer a fight like this.
But wait, where'd you get the hair?
I went to paddypimbletthair.com.
Wow. You actually bought it off the...
Oh,
okay. I was like, wow, because I think he does sell it.
No, does he really?
I think so. Or maybe I've seen people wear it.
No, actually, that would have been a nice, cordial shout out. Hey, man, I bought a wig from your website. No, I literally I think I got it off of Amazon, and I said like blonde wig, blonde men's wig, and that's where I got it. And I got it down here in Florida, so
it looks good.
It might be making a couple appearances over the next couple weeks.
By the way, in that conversation with Hunter, did you fly out to Las Vegas to sit and talk about this?
Yeah.
Why did that need to happen?
Big business in the UFC, man. It's Hunter and I have a great relationship, a great bond, a great working, mutually beneficial, symbiotic, win-win situation where it's like, hey, I'm never going to ask for way more than I'm worth, and I expect you to give me your highest and best for this juncture in my career, and where we're at and what we're doing and the value that I bring. It's as close to a perfect working relationship as you can get, and it's legit and it's awesome. And it's like, hey man, I need to come out to Vegas, sit with you. He actually met with me at like 6:30 or 7 p.m. on a Sunday night at his office. Nobody was at the UFC office, his PI, just the security guards. They had to let me in, and then we sat there under the dim lights of his offices and hashed it out. And here we are in camp.
New deal? We get a new deal out of this, or what?
Man, all I know is the UFC likes what I bring to the table.
I love it,
and I love what the UFC brings to the table. Man, they have changed my life, and I finally feel like I'm in the place where I'm supposed to be, and it's been great, and it's going to keep on getting better. Got a big summer.
How did we get to 5 rounds?
I like 5 rounds. I mean, I think it was thrown out by the UFC. I love 5 rounds. I think Paddy has faded. He faded in the Tony Ferguson fight. I think he was fading in the Jared Gordon fight. I just went 25 minutes with Charles Oliveira, the greatest submission artist in UFC history. And my body felt it a little bit, but while I was in the trenches, man, I felt great. And I love fighting 25 minutes. It's deep waters. I mean, you got an opportunity for me to continue to solidify who I am as a lightweight in the world in this division. And you got an opportunity for a young, up-and-coming, hungry guy who's got his greatest moment of opportunity against a guy like me. So why not do it? Why not do it 25 minutes? If you say you're going to be a future champion, if you were looked at as if you were going to be a future champion, you got to fight 25 minutes. I have trained for and competed in 25-minute fights probably more times than he has actually fought. So I'm used to a 25-minute fight camp, and here's another one.
To the best of your knowledge, was he into it off the jump? Hey there, sorry to interrupt. Just want to remind you, if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate it very much. And while you're at it, give us a thumbs up too. You know, we've got live shows, interviews, clips, and a whole lot more going on this here channel. All right, now back to the show.
I think so. It actually, we spoke about it. I think, because I was getting tagged in it on Twitter or something that he said, see you at the top of one of his videos. So obviously that was a quick hint to who the opponent may be. And obviously I smiled and can't wait to go compete against him.
Okay. You said just before, big summer coming up. What were you alluding to?
Big summer coming up.
This is spring, by the way. This is spring, April.
This is spring. This is spring, but I'm ready to fight in summer because there's going to be, there could be a lot of stuff happening. So we'll see. I think obviously Ilia jumping into the division, Max jumping into the division, Poirier talking about a retirement fight. You got Gaethje and Hooker here in 3 weeks' time, whatever it is. Big fights, man. And I'm excited to share the card with Volk and Lopez, who are fighting for the vacant 145 title, and we welcome Ilia Topuria with open arms.
Does that mean we're looking, if all goes well, at a potentially quick turnaround for you?
All I want is quick turnarounds. Listen, I think I got a little bit of a reputation for a guy who likes to sit on the sidelines,
Huh.
because of the whole Conor situation. Never forget, I'm a man of my word. I signed my name to a contract that said I, Michael Chandler, will do the Ultimate Fighter 31 and then fight Conor McGregor. Did I wait too long? Yeah, in a lot of people's eyes. But I'm the guy who came into the UFC in September of 2020, took a short notice backup opportunity in October, and then fought January, May, November, fought 5 fights in 26 months or whatever it was. I'm not a guy who sits on the sidelines. I fought 6 times in 13 months when I was in Bellator. I'm a guy who is extremely active. I live this sport every single day. So, yeah, I'm not afraid of a quick turnaround this summer with all the stuff that's happening, new names coming into the division. You've got Islam talking about maybe going up, maybe leaving the lightweight division. Never wanted to come, never want to make 155 again. I need to be ready. So April 12th, we go out and we do our job. We get our hand raised in spectacular fashion, and I'm the guy who's right there on the doorstep to some big opportunities, some big fights.
In those conversations, Connor a part of them at all? Is it possible 2025 is the year?
Connor's always a part of it, man. I mean, it's going to be one of those deals where, you know, I'm the name. I'm the his road back to the UFC goes through me. It goes straight through Nashville, Tennessee, and Michael Chandler. We've got to finish the Ultimate Fighter 31. That is the UFC's sentiment. I think it's even his sentiment. We've tweeted a little bit back and forth here and there. He said, I'm a man of my word. Well, if you're a man of your word, then there's only one guy that you're going to fight when you come back to the UFC. The guy who had a contract with your name on it, the guy who signed on the dotted line and still to this day has never missed weight and never pulled out of a fight. So could be 2025, could be this summer, could be this fall, could be this winter, could be 2026. I don't know. All I know is, as you can see by the decisions that I'm making and the moves that I'm making, fought Charles Oliveira in November, and here we are just 3 months removed from that, and I'm in camp getting ready to fight Paddy Pimblett in April in Miami.
In your heart of hearts, what are you feeling now these days? Does it ever happen?
Heart of hearts is tough, man, because I think heart of hearts says that Conor is coming back at some point. But if I'm a betting man, if I'm using my brain, I wouldn't put money on it. But that's where I'm at today. Right now, obviously, I'm focused on a blonde dude from Liverpool. So I think my heart of heart says I'm not. My heart of heart says I'm not sure for sure, but Conor's got to come back to his first love. The one thing that has given him every single thing, every single shiny object that he is currently chasing and taking all these side quests and side jobs and all these different things, every single thing that he has can be tied back in some way or another to the UFC, the opportunity that they gave him, the push that they gave him. And does he want his legacy to be, yeah, my last fight, I broke my leg and I touted the greatest comeback in combat sports history. I fooled everybody for a couple of years and then signed on the dotted line to fight Michael Chandler and then pulled out of the fight, never to return again. I don't think he wants his legacy to be that. Then again, I haven't walked a mile in that man's shoes, so I'm not going to say what he is thinking. But my heart of heart says he's coming back at some point. But if I was a betting man, I ain't putting money on it.
What was your reaction when you saw that your old foe, Patricio Pitbull, would be on the card as well, right below you? I mean, just kind of crazy. 2025, the two faces of Bellator for the past decade plus on a UFC pay-per-view main card. What was your reaction?
Not surprised. I mean, not surprised at him or the laundry list of everybody who is tweeting at Don Davis and PFL. And before that, it was Bellator before they got completely absolved or whatever you call it, however that went down. It just continues to solidify that the UFC is the only place for mixed martial arts. Take it from me. Take it from a guy like Patricio Pitbull. 2 years from now, a year from now, sit him on your show and have him answer honestly what the difference is and how much bigger it is, how much more significant it is over here. And if he plays his cards right and does his job, how much more lucrative it is. It's just it's very interesting, man, because obviously I think I have the best perspective of anybody in mixed martial arts when it comes to the significance of the UFC. And I love the UFC, not because it's the UFC. I love UFC because I know what the opposite of the UFC is. I know what it's like being outside of the UFC. I know what it's like to go to UFC events and have people ask me to take pictures of Ryan Bader and Gray Maynard and Michael Johnson and Robbie Lawler, and then ask me who I am. And I'm like, well, yeah, I actually just beat Eddie Alvarez a couple months ago, and they're like, "Oh, you're that Bellator guy."
Mm.
You know, I know what it's like, right? So I bit my tongue. I swallowed my pride. I kept working. I kept my nose to the grindstone. I patiently waited, buying my time, built my platform, built my skill set, built my mind, body, and soul and spirit until it was the right time. And that door, it was abundantly clear that the door was open to go to the UFC. And now it's worked out perfectly. And I think if you asked 80% of the roster of PFL, GFL, Bellator, all these other ones, they want to be right where I'm at.
100%. There's no doubt about that. How do you think he does in the UFC? Because he's coming in a little older than you were when you came in.
Honestly, I haven't seen one of his fights in a very long time. So I don't know where his skill set is at. All I do know is I wish him well. There was a little bit of animosity, a little bit of bad blood. I think a lot of that actually stemmed from my discontent with where I was in my life, knowing that I was stuck in Bellator and wanted to get out. So I needed something. I needed something to blame it on, and sometimes my opponents were that. And Patricio was an easy target because I had beat his brother, and he FU'd me when I stood on the cage, and I said something about family. I said something about family, obviously, because I fought his brother. They are, by definition, family. So when I used the word family, I think he was thinking I was talking about his wife and his kids and his mom and his aunts and all that stuff. So it became language barrier, unfortunate set of circumstances. But I wish him well. I think he's dynamic. I think he's explosive. I think he's got a great opportunity to fight Yair Rodriguez, who's ranked, number 5, number 4. So he could find himself in top 5 in the UFC here in 7 weeks' time, and maybe the number 1 contender, maybe the guy who fights for the belt next. That's what happened with me, depending on how the circumstances go. He's a stud, man. And I spent a lot of time around him, obviously, in Bellator, watched him a lot, shared a lot of cards with him. He's a fan favorite for a reason, and it'll be a fun fight. Guys got to buy the pay-per-view. UFC 314.
Would love to get your thoughts on the division, because when this announcement came out on Wednesday evening, the top story was Ilia is no longer the featherweight champion. And then on Saturday, Dana White was asked, is it kind of a formality that it's going to be Ilia versus Islam? And he said, no, not necessarily. There's a lot going on. I said at the top of the show, I can't imagine Ilya's giving up the title, vacating the title at 145 to then fight a number 1 contender fight, to fight a guy like Arman or a Charles or whomever before getting a title fight. Could I ask you, you're very smart when it comes to the fight game, especially this MMA game. How do you foresee this all playing out with Ilia?
Well, I think it's a good question because, conventional wisdom would say you never give up a belt without a guarantee of the belt that you're going up to go fight for. But I do think Ilia Topuria is a different breed. I don't think we've seen a guy who is as confident as he is since Conor McGregor, circa 2000, whatever it was, 15, 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's outside the realm of the possibilities that Ilia literally said, here, take this belt. I don't want it. I am now a lightweight. Match me up against whoever you want to match me up against. Now, with that being said, I don't know if that's true. We could very well. Dana is running the most successful mixed martial arts promotion on the planet, and sometimes he lies. Sometimes he lies on purpose. So we could very well see Islam versus Topuria getting announced tomorrow. That is for him to know and for all of us to find out. And I wish I had more inside info for you, but I don't.
I'm just curious. Fair is a weird word when it comes to the fight game, but my understanding was, all right, they kind of promised it to Charles after the Arman situation in January. Is it fair for Charles to get leapfrog? He was supposed to get a title shot. Remember, he gets the cut. He then has to fight Arman. He doesn't get the title fight, all that stuff. And so I don't know what to do with Charles, who by all accounts seems to be a person they love and who's done right by them, and vice versa. So what do you do with Charles? Do you match them up? Do you move Islam up to 170 and he's gone, and now you just do them for the vacant title? It's not as clean as I maybe thought it was back on Wednesday.
No, it's not clean, and that's part of the reason why I jumped at this opportunity. I need to be coming off of a win with all of the craziness that is happening. I need to go fight Paddy Pimblett ASAP to have my name in those talks. Now, if you would have asked me, I still think at this point I've just got a disdain for guys who pull out of fights right before. Now, I don't know his injury. I don't know how serious it was, how serious it wasn't. I've always said if I can walk to the cage, if I can walk to the octagon, I'm stepping inside the octagon and I'm competing. Is that a smart thing? No. If you're a young fighter right now, don't necessarily take that page out of the Michael Chandler playbook. I've lost fights because of it, but it's just who I am and how I was raised and how I was bred. So, with that being said, I think Charles leapfrogs Armin. I think Charles should be looked at as above Armin because of what happened there. Now with I think Armin's done some interviews and it sounds like Armin's cool with, hey man, put me against whoever. I'm young. I still got a lot of gas in the tank. I'll fight whoever. I think Charles versus Armin would be obviously a great fight for a 5-rounder to see how that plays out with under 5 rounds. But then you got Ilia coming into the division. I mean, dude, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
But I would put Charles over top of Armin as we speak right now, even though his last loss was to Armin. But
Right.
Charles is a stud, man.
2 last things. How do you think Ilia actually does at 155?
I've met him one time, and I've stood next to him, sized him up. It's what we do as fighters. It's like, hey, are you a 70 pounder? Are you a 55? You're 35? Yeah. What is that guy? Yeah, man, that guy cuts a ton of weight. I don't think he's going to be big for the weight class. But that sure didn't mean a dang thing when Frankie Edgar had his reign, right? He's definitely not going to be a big guy for the weight class. But I think his style is very, very, very great for mixed martial arts. He's calm. He is composed. He's got dynamite in his hands. Now, dynamite in his hands at 145 is different than dynamite in his hands at 155. Him getting hit by the guys at 155 is different than him getting hit by the guys at 145. Him getting grappled and grabbed, picked up, slammed, going through the exchanges, much different at the different weight class. But he's obviously a confident professional. And with 10 pounds extra, he can put on a little bit of weight, cut less weight. It's very interesting. The whole 145 is hard to make thing because I saw him talking about drinking wine on fight week, and I don't drink wine for about 12 weeks leading up to a fight, so I don't really understand the whole weight cutting thing. I think that was just kind of an easy, low hanging fruit excuse. Okay. I think it's more he's just confident that he can go up to 155 and beat guys, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be a rude awakening. He could come in and walk through 3 dudes and win the title. Who knows? But he's very good at what he does.
Last thing, did you watch the fights this weekend, and in particular the main event?
I did.
Cejudo's song and how it all finished. We were talking about it extensively at the top of the show. Just curious your take very quickly. I thought a point should be taken away. And the reason I thought that was ultimately this sucks for Henry Cejudo. He fights through the eye poke. The round ends. Now all of a sudden they go to the scorecards, and instead of it being a no contest, they go to the scorecards. No point taken away. He gets the loss. If he had just said I can't fight and doesn't try to fight through it for that minute 15, it's a no contest. And if they determine that it's an intentional eye poke, it's a DQ in his favor. Ultimately, I feel like there aren't enough repercussions for these things. And it's kind of weird because they just brought back the old gloves, and the new gloves were supposed to stop the eye pokes from happening. So in the end, there are some people who thought Herzog nailed it, and it's easy for us to sit here 2 days later and break it all down. But as a fighter, how did you feel like that all went down? Were you cool with that?
What's really funny is that I have been fighting since I was 22 years old. I've been fighting for 15 years. I've had 32, 33 fights, whatever it is. I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I'm as big a fan as Jason Herzog as anybody. I think we've got some really, really great referees who do a really, really good job, who know the rule book and they know all the different circumstances in their sleep. But I did not understand what was happening because you could hear him. You could hear him audibly saying, well, I'm going to start the 4th round, stop it, call a time. And then, and I thought, okay, well, that makes sense, I guess, for some reason, whatever he's going to do. But then his response to that was, because then we can go to the scorecards. Well, it's like, well, at some point, do you go to the scorecards? It was a really bad eye poke. It was a double eye poke. It was a Three Stooges, both eyes, obviously his left eye took the brunt of it, but very interesting scenario. I would lean toward the camp of, hey, Jason Herzog knows what he's talking about, maybe because it was at the very end of the 3rd round and he, decided to stand up. I guess he didn't really say I can't see, or maybe he did say I can't see at the end of the 3rd round. I don't know. It was very interesting, but it is unfortunate. An eye poke is tough because it's never on purpose, man. But at some point, it's a habit, right? I can train every single day, and if I keep training with my fingers out, I'm asking to poke somebody in the eye, right? If that's what I'm doing and I'm training. So I think we as coaches, we as teammates, we need to be training this, just like we train punches, keys, knees, kicks, and elbows. We need to be training the pawing / parrying / technique of the crash between two guys without our fingers out. It's just part of it, man. It's crazy. It's a very unfortunate thing because you can get kicked in the nuts, you can get punched in the throat, all these little inadvertent things. But man, you get poked in the eye, you only get 2 eyes, and there's a lot of people who, it would be very, very, very unfortunate to lose your eyesight.
Yes. You also only have 2 nuts too, but I get the point.
You don't have 2 nuts, but yeah, I mean, it's okay.
No,
I'd rather live without my nuts than my eyes,
God.
I think.
All right. Tough visual.
Yeah, right?
I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much. Love the fight. Congratulations. Congrats on everything coming your way, and good luck in the next few weeks as you prepare for the 12th of April. Can't wait for it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. See you at the top.
Yes, sir. There he is, the great Michael Chandler. Always a pleasure to pick his brain, and what a tremendous fight that is. Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler is just fun, right? Is there any scenario in which that fight is not going to be fun? It is fun, and the interesting wrinkle is that it's a 5-round fight, 5-round co-main event. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.